Want to have a spicy chat? Hi, I'm Caitlin E, and welcome back to the Lit Review. Welcome to my first ever attempt at what I'm going to call a spicy chat, where I kind of talk through my opinions and thoughts on something that I don't expect all of you to agree with me on. And first of all, I want to set the table stakes. It's okay if you don't agree with me, or if you vehemently disagree with me, please just let me know in the comments. All that I ask is that we keep it respectful. All that said, I hope today isn't too spicy of a topic. I'm going to spend today talking to you about why I am over illustrated covers. But I don't just want to rest on my laurels here and just be spicy for spice's sake, because I'm not a romance novel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why I'm currently not a fan anymore of illustrated covers, and then talk about what I would really like to see next as a romance reader, as somebody who passionately loves the genre of romance, because that's specifically what we'll be talking about today, is the illustrated cover trend in the romance industry. And I think the biggest thing I want to say up front is I'm just bored with illustrated covers, and specifically I'm talking about a style that has been trending for the last several years. It's like that 2D illustrated cover style where everything feels flat and they're just kind of like vague geometric shapes of people. They're everywhere. And you know what? Trends are not new in this industry by any stretch of the imagination. Not for romance and not for any genre in publishing. So I'm not here to bag on any specific illustrator's hard work or the authors who use these kind of covers for a couple of reasons. One, there is nothing wrong with moving towards a trend, especially if you're a new author, new illustrator. Like, these are all very reasonable things to do because you, at the end of the day, are trying to sell your book or your illustrations. So I'm not here to say negative things about people whose craft is on the line. That's not my intent with this video whatsoever. My problem with these 2D illustrated covers and how prolific they have become within the romance genre in particular is that they've started to lose all meaning to me as a reader. And I mean that specifically in the sense that when I go into a store looking to browse, to explore, to find a new read just for the fun of it, all of these covers start to look so similar that it's hard for me to distinguish what I might be interested in or what could draw me in. And that's not really doing credit or favor to the author or the illustrator who's doing this art. You know, like they are very capable people, I am quite sure. But if I were to go out to the shelves in my living room right now, which maybe I will do later, there's so many books that I couldn't even tell you what they were about just on the cover alone, because they look so dang similar. And I have bought books, duplicates, because I didn't think I already owned it, and then to come home and find out that I did because the cover just didn't resonate in my brain. But as I alluded to before, trends and cover trends in general are not new, especially not in the romance genre. Like, we started out in like the 70s and 80s with a totally different illustrated style, the clinch cover, who were more like painted style covers that I personally love, but have gotten a lot of flack over the years for being like too explicit. They're not discreet. They're not the kind of thing that you want to like openly read necessarily in an airport. Now, I'm saying you in the broadest sense. I have no shame or no like weird feelings about reading those kind of things in an airport. I do it all the time. But I understand that for some people that's a huge issue. That's actually one of the benefits of these illustrated covers, is that they have felt like a little bit more palatable to take out in public, that you can read your smut on the plane. I mean, you do it anyway. We've also seen trends like in the early 2000s, especially in paranormal romance, the like hard-bodied guy shirtless on the cover. We still see that all the time, sometimes in indies and self-pubs. And then, of course, we've seen the blooming flower of romance novels, where suddenly the publishing industry thinks we're all Georgia O'Keeffe paintings, which, like, I get, but also that's not telling me anything about your book. All of that to say that trends are not new. They're not going to go away. I am just tired of this one and would like to see some innovation. So I don't really know precisely when illustrated covers started to hit a big boom, but when I personally started to notice them was around 2019, and then I feel like they really took off in 2020 because they were bright and they were colorful and they were grabbing, and there was something kind of sweet about them too. There was also a real strong parallel between what was going on in YA cover trends at the time and this new illustrated cover trend in romance. And I don't believe that's an accident. I imagine that publishers were trying to capture that audience a little bit more and bring them in as they learned that a lot of women were reading young adult fiction. So what I actually love about a 2D illustrated cover is I like how bright and colorful they are. That's still the draw for me. They're beautiful. My shelves are much more vibrant because of these books, but I feel like the trend has just become overused. It's kind of like when you notice yourself start to use a word over and over again, it loses all meaning. Cat. I don't want to make this sound like it's an on or off switch, like it's an all or nothing proposition, because I don't think that's true. I think there are some really amazing illustrated covers out there that are continuing to push and innovate and get me excited as a reader. And that's really all I'm after when I'm making this point and criticism, such as it is that I still want to be excited about the books I pick up. I want to get absolutely sucked in to a book based on its cover. And I do think there are some illustrated books that still do that. So let's talk about that real quick for a second. You know I'm a fan, nay, a stan, of Stolen by Wolves by Alex Robinson. This is clearly an illustrated cover. It's just in a different style of illustration. There's depth and there's texture to it in a way that I find really compelling and grabbing. It's what initially drew me to this series and has made me rave about it now on my channel multiple times. It's also really cool because this is a self-published book, and Alex Robinson is also the illustrator of her own work. Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes people do commissions. There's no judgment from me on like who does what. And again, I really want to emphasize that I am not judging authors nor illustrators for following the trend that I'm currently just kind of over, but I am really excited to see innovation in cover design when I see things like this. I don't own a copy currently because I'm currently waiting for it to come out in its traditional publication, but I think another fantastic example of this is Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. So Ivy kind of took TikTok and then YouTube by storm with her self-promotion of her indie that is now getting a traditional publishing deal, which I'm so excited to see. And she speaks really frequently about how her cover design in this style was a huge part of her approach. It is illustrated. It is undeniably illustrated. And I believe Ivy has spoken about how during her flip to traditional publishing, she intends to keep this style, which I think is great because it still fits in the illustrated cover like feel, but it still feels unique to this book. Like this illustration style and the artists that did the work, like clearly understood the market, but then did their own thing, did something that still felt a little unique. And that's really all I'm looking for is a little bit of variance here, friends. Another more traditional published book that I think is doing a riff on this trend in a way that I find really grabbing is the novel You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I haven't read this one, but I see it everywhere on Book Talk as well as BookTube. And there's something about this cover. It's a little bit more bold in its color choice. There's more texture and depth to it. It's not 2D, it's not flat. And then the style of their illustration is a little different. That's really all I'm looking for. I'm not saying that all illustrated covers have to go. I just would like there to be some more variety. And I think the 3 books I've mentioned here are excellent examples of what that variety could look like. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a book with mass appeal or with discrete covers. Everybody has a personal preference, and I understand how difficult treading that line must feel to people who are trying to navigate the market, whether that's as an independent self-published author or part of a traditional publishing arm. I can't say it enough, but I really am not trying to point fingers at individual people who have made these choices. I'm more just trying to say that as a reader, I'm tired. I need something different. Something's got to give here. And maybe I'm the only one that's feeling that way. That's kind of why I want to have a conversation with you down in the comments, because maybe it doesn't bother you. And maybe it's just me. Maybe this is just me and my weird feelings about covers, but I like to see a range of types and styles on my shelves. Like, it's just more fun for me as somebody who has a large collection. It helps me get interested in different types of books at the store if I see a cover that catches my eye. So let's talk about what I personally would like to see instead. It's not enough for me to say, hey, I'm bored, I'm over it. So I'm going to try to add to the conversation in different ways. This is another cool opportunity for you all to tell me what you would like to see next in romance publishing design when it comes to covers. For me, I know this is a personal taste, y'all, but I want to see a return of the clinch cover, but I want to see it in like a new way. I don't just want us to go back to old school cover design just cause that's a like false sense of nostalgia, but I think there's a fun way to kind of tip the hat while still innovating and still doing interesting things. So I think a subset of romance that already does this super well are the monster romance writers. A lot of these books are self-published or indie, but I am going to hold them up as kind of like fun, cool examples of what could be. And with any of these examples, I am pulling a lot of styles that one could say are illustrated. Again, I don't want illustrated to be completely removed from the conversation. I just want to see some more innovation and more technique involved because I find that really compelling as a reader who is clearly cover obsessed because I talk about it all the time. So here's some examples of books that I think are really crushing it with this, but they're all in the monster romance subgenre because I think that is a subgenre that is willing to kind of cheekily play with the tradition of the clinch cover, but still bring in the illustrated style that's been popping off for the last several years. So a great example of this, I think, is Gillian Graves' Blood Moon. Like, this is clearly a clinch cover, and so I can define my terms for you. A clinch cover is when the two main characters are in some kind of embrace. This is clearly a very suggestive one, but they're often quite seductive and sensual, which, you know what, it's a romance novel. I get that not everybody wants that on their cover, but having variants like this is very fun and engaging. Katie Robert is another author that I think has been doing this very well with their series, A Deal with a Demon. So A Demon's Bargain is one example. And again, this is kind of a clinch cover or a nod to the clinch cover, but it's not deeply suggestive. There's like a lot of intent and sensuality involved, but like this is interesting. It's still illustrated, but it's in a really different type of style that just feels like there's more texture, more depth, more going on the front cover. And then another series that I think does this pretty well with its own unique take on illustrated style is the Married to Magic series by Elise Kova. I have A Duel with the Vampire Lord here. So again, illustrated cover. Really awesome sense of depth and texture to the scene, what they're wearing. They're clearly engaged with each other. There's like a embrace happening here, but it's not overtly sensual, which I think tracks pretty well with what this series kind of offers. But like, this is so grabbing. And maybe it's not for everybody. Maybe none of these are for everybody, but I want to see more stuff like this that's playful, that's like responding to the past but still innovating towards the future. That's what I really want to see in my romance novel covers. But I think there's so much more to it than that, than what I'm really after here. So another option that I think could be fun if you want to stay in the illustrated style or just in romance covers in general, I need a sense of movement. Part of my ish with the 2D illustrated covers is that they're, well, two-dimensional. They're flat. There's no sense of going on with them. And I don't find that hyper motivating as a reader anymore. So some good examples of this, I think, come actually from the dark romance indie publishers or self-pubs. Some of those are starting to get more mainstream. Some of them are starting to show up in our Targets friends. So, you know, it's breaking through. It's not just the indie scene. There's a sense of motion here. And I think that's some of what's missing for me in these 2D covers. So like Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. Not your typical illustrated style. I would say this is probably like computer generated, if I'm being honest, but I don't know for sure. I have no idea what their like style was in drawing this or designing this, or if it's drawn at all. But the undeniable sense of motion to this cover is what makes it so stunning to me. Like the fact that it feels like a small piece of art. Then there's this little self-pub number by another book talk person, Shannon Elliott. This is Angels in the Dark. So this is a pretty simple cover in terms of what's going on, but there is motion. There's a sense of movement. There's really interesting use of color. I do not, again, with any of these, I don't know who's illustrating what. I don't know if they are using like computer generated stuff. And I think that's a whole other conversation that we could potentially do a different type of spicy chat about. What I'm focusing on here is that like, this is more interesting to me to look at. is that there's a sense of something happening here and I might have questions. Like I might want to know who this person is, which is more compelling to me than some of like the 2D flat animated style. Here's another potential topic for a spicy chat in the future, friends. Recovers, because boy howdy do I have feelings about those. But for now I'll stop myself. I will instead just focus again on that sense of motion. I think this is true of both the Bloom recover of this book that I'm about to show you and the original like self-pub cover, is there's a sense of motion, and that's Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. There's not much going on this cover. It's not my favorite cover of all time. I actually prefer the original indie cover that I will put here so you can see for comparison, but there is still, like, even in the like indie cover, like with the gripping arms, there's a sense of tension, of movement, of something going on. I think this cover does the book more favors for what its contents actually holds. This is the Bloom recover that is available at Target, and this kills me. There's still, however, motion here, which I think is somehow more interesting and compelling. I also think if we're still interested in illustrated things, and I still am, clearly, I'm showing you some examples that have different types of illustration, give it to me in a different style. Like, shake the market up a little bit. Give me something that feels like watercolor or sculpture or collage. So here are a couple of examples that I think are doing that to some degree. Here's Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall. This was published by Del Rey, and that's a more traditional publisher, and it still has like that illustrated feel, the beautiful bright colors that I tend to associate with that style of publishing. But there's something more sculptural here at play. There's something that references an older style of art that is appropriate for the contents of this book, but also, like, it's just heckin' pretty. This is grabbing. I want to look at this. And it is still bright and colorful and fairly discreet. Then let's talk about another book that has since been recovered in a way that does it no favors. But I have the original cover in this instance, and that's Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This book popped off a couple of years ago. I still haven't read it, I'm gonna be honest with you. But did I pick it up because of the cover? Yeah, I did. In addition to hearing good things about it from a variety of different sources on YouTube here, it's a gripping cover. I don't think the recovers of this series are doing it any favors because they look like a certain XOXO Gossip Girl series from back in the day. But this is interesting to me. Like, this is a collage. I get that it's not going to be for everybody, that some people might find this alienating or not interesting. But this is a cover that I want to stare at. I want to read the book and then understand all the little references that are in the cover. That is a satisfying thing for me to experience as a reader, especially in a genre that I think sometimes wants to spoon feed you the content. And what I mean by spoon feeding is that it sometimes feels like these big traditional publishers just want you to buy the book and then never speak of it again or get in and get out. Like, they don't expect you to care. And I get it. Romance is a huge seller. It's a huge market driver for a lot of these publishers, which, you know, once again, I get it. Mass appeal does have mass appeal, especially if you're a publisher. And I'm not here to say that that's wrong. I just think we've overdone it a little bit, and there's some cool opportunities to do something different. I think another thing that I am kind of touching on in some of these examples is that I just desperately wish there was a little bit more texture and depth. It's really the 2D portion of the animated covers that are getting to me here. Like, I want a cover that I can display. You know, not everything needs to be a special edition, and I was very careful to not bring any special editions as examples of what I thought could be interesting, because I don't think that like helps the conversation move forward very much, because they're special editions for a reason, right? But I want to feel like I could happily have that book displayed like cover forward on my shelf and not just the spine. I think there's some really cool opportunities in the community, in the publishing world, to do something that isn't necessarily super expensive, but is interesting, is unique, is eye-grabbing. And I know that's also the crux of it when I talk about this 2D illustrated style. I've also been incorrectly using animated and illustrated as like the same word when they're not, so my apologies. But I know they're easy to make. They're cheap. They're straightforward, and they get the message across. And there's nothing wrong with those things. But I am looking for a little bit of something else. That doesn't mean that I actually want these 2D illustrated covers to go away completely. I just would like a little bit more variety so that when I do see a 2D illustrated cover, I still think it's special. I still think it's interesting. And I think the point I'm trying to make here is that they no longer feel special or interesting to me as a romance reader. You all may feel differently though, so I eagerly look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Again, all that I ask is that you keep it respectful here. I think you all know that. I just feel really compelled to say it. It's the little peacekeeper in me, despite the fact that I wanted to come on here and have a spicy chat with you. I guess I'm just interested in the question of what does it look like to love romance out loud? What does it take for the romance genre to be a little braver, a little bolder in some of its decisions, not in the contents of its books, but in the book covers themselves. So I know that can be intimidating and maybe not seem like a great business move for a lot of these publishing houses, but especially when it comes to bucking trends and starting new ones. But what would it take for that to be inspirational for you? That's really the question I would love to hear more from in the comments below. Like, what do you want to see next? Are you tired of illustrated covers, or are you still a-okay with them being the dominant force that they are in the publishing market right now? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I look forward to chatting. So, thank you for spending time with me. I hope you have a fantastic reading day or night, depending on when you see this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
Hold on, girl, now wait just a minute. I've got something to say, you should hear it. Oh, I'm happy to make time